Dr. Lamin Sabally, for coming to our program once again. We are looking at this concept, do or die. When Ousainou Darboe makes a statement, it is usually amplified by others. It's like a tick for tack. So that statement was further amplified by Dr. Demba Sabally, who said since Darboe uttered that statement, they also consider 2026 do or die. I'm making reference to this point about this 2026 presidential election. It could be the last for the likes of Halifa Sallah. It could be the last for the likes of lawyer Ousainou Darboe. It could also be the last for Adama Barrow, President Adama Barrow. It could also be the last for Ahmad Bah. These are old politicians who, when we talk about 2032, they will be, if they are around, God willing, they will actually not be as sound and energetic as they are now. And for Gambia, though we are young, but we've never had a president who has been in office into your late 70s and 80s. So what is your own take on this concept that I'm trying to sell to you?
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Balde. It's a pleasure to join you. There is no argument about the current situation in the Gambia. Let's actually, reflect our memories back to what actually precipitated 2016, because we had a president who overstayed when the military junta took over. Just a little history. I mean, we have to put a context to this so that Gambians understand that we would not be allowed to live in political slumber. The politics of hoodwinking ended, in 2016. 2016, the people that were in the opposition are the same people now in government. They all argued, emphatically that, Jammeh overstayed. When Jammeh came to power, the first thing he talked about was that Sadauda and PPP, they entrenched themselves, they overstayed. When the junta came, they gave that how to call it, a promise to Gambians that they would have a transition of 2 years, after which they will have a new constitution. Of course, in the new constitution, there was a term limit clause for 2 terms. But because the young military, they had desire to self-perpetuate, they deleted that from the original draft of the 1997 constitution. So the constitution that was forced on the throat of the Gambians, actually the term limit clause was taken out. So the likes of Ahmad Bah, the likes of Ousainou Darboe, the likes of Halifa Sallah, the likes of even Majanko Samusa, and the late Wajuara, all of them were under the impression that Jammeh overstayed. And then that's why coalition building started with NAD. I think before NAD, in fact, if you remember, UDP had a coalition, and then Ahmad Bah was part of that coalition. I remember that. I think when NAD came, there was a split. Ahmad Bah became presidential candidate for NAD. They all did this to actually flush out Jammeh for overstaying. So now, with the advent of the Barrow's presidency in 2016 or 17, every Gambian, were convinced that starting with Barrow, they don't want to see any president, stay in power for a maximum term of 2 years of 2 terms of 10 years. Even Barrow himself was convinced. Ahmad Bah at that stage was convinced. It was one of the most important parts of the coalition manifesto or campaign promise that they will introduce a new constitution with a term limit clause. That is why when the CRC went around for that broad-based consultation, both within and outside of the country, the majority of Gambians say they want Barrow to, serve only 2 terms. That's why that desire was actually inserted in the draft 2020 constitution. That's why every Gambian believe and convinced that Barrow's 4th term should be the fourth term as a transition should be incorporated, so that if he couldn't go beyond 2026. Everybody was convinced that this is the desire of the majority of the Gambians. They throw out that draft constitution out of political, desire for Barrow to self-perpetuate. This is a fact. So what I don't understand, people who were advocating for 2 term when when they were in opposition, what has actually made them change to believe that Barrow should actually now go for more than 2 times? That's political hypocrisy. Gambians should actually, understand that what is important is to put the national interest above personal interest. Unfortunately, the politics of patronage, the politics of lies and deception, politics of brinksmanship, these were synonymous with the 22 years of Yahya Jammeh's era. Gambians should graduate from that and then put the country's interest above national interest, country's interest above individual interest. This is why, if you take the connotation, Darboe said, he said, do or die, meaning we all see the performances of this government. Without question, if Gambians actually, vote for Barrow based on his records, you would definitely know he cannot even go for a third time because already he failed. He's leading a government that is actually plagued by rampant corruption, gross inefficiencies, the amount of money that they borrow. If you put the combined presidency of Yahya Jammeh and Sadauda, the amount of money these people borrow is actually more than the combined presidency of the loan. The loan that was borrowed during the combined presidency of both Yahya Jammeh and Sadauda. It's unfortunate that we see the trickle-down effect on the Gambia. The livelihood is even getting unbearable. So what we believe is we have to actually go back to the desire that actually, precipitated Barrow's presidency. We don't want to see any president to serve more than 2 terms of 10 years maximum. And, with all due respect, people would argue that the Constitution actually give Barrow the legal right to. But what is wrong with moral? Politics without moral standard is just decadent.
Okay.
So Gambians have to actually wake up from their political slumber and come to reality that Barrow, if he doesn't want to if he doesn't want to live honorably 2026, we can use the power of the ballot box and then kick him out, just like Gambians did to Yahya Jammeh in 2016.
Okay. Before we talk about Yahya Jammeh, first, let's dissect this statement by Darboe. It's a loaded statement. Some people, especially within the NPP camp, are running with it, do or die. The connotation is maybe going to be a fight, maybe a bloody one.
There wouldn't be any fight. The UDP has proven to be the most, tolerant political party in the Gambia. If you follow the history, this party became a member of the UDP post Yahya Jammeh's era. But I followed the UDP. They have a leader who is a lawyer and law-abiding. 2021 election, I was in the Gambia when supporters actually congregated at Darboe's compound in Pipeline. They could have actually be agitated and take to the street, but they tear gas them. What did Darboe tell them? Go sit down. We'll use the power of the laws and challenge the results in court. It went to the extent that during the time of Yahya Jammeh, people were calling Darboe a coward because he agreed to submit himself to constitutional rule, to obey the supremacy of the Constitution. It's the most tolerant political party. The do or die has no other connotation, only to actually emphasize the urgency to vote Barrow out. That's nothing beyond that. If Gambians decide to retain, Barrow for another term, I'm convinced that what Darboe would tell Gambian people is just to go and then, follow the law. If there's a presumption that the election is stolen, nobody's going to go to the street. Darboe would always use the court as the best avenue to challenge. He has that integrity. He has that patriotism. There is no politician who loves lawyer Darboe than any other person in the Gambia because of the love and patriotism he has for the Gambia, and that is actually never unwavering though. So the do or die thing, they can just give all kind of interpretation to it. But again, what Lamin Sabally said, he has no relations with me. He said they are going to shed blood. In fact, he is given a threatening situation, a government in power, a state minister standing at the political platform to say we will actually drop blood for Barrow to be voted in. What kind of threat is he sending to Gambians? We have passed that era. We want to see politicians promote their agenda. We want a policy-centered debate, not politics of threats, intimidation. We have passed that. The UDP has endured the most brutal political situation for 22 years. They fought Jammeh, not physically, but through democratic means. So for Darboe to say a do or die, that doesn't mean that the UDP is planning to actually, bring chaos in the Gambia. That's not a party I'm associated with. It's a party of intellectuals. It's a party of seasoned, civil, international, and local civil servants with proven records. It's a party of intellectuals. Some of the people are retired international civil servants. They could decide just to retire and then eat their money, but they decided for love of country to be associated with the party in order to actually bring sanity in our political dispensation, to move the Gambia forward. All the countries are moving forward, but the Gambia is actually going backward just because of stupid politics. Excuse my language for that, because of too much partisanship. We have passed. Look at West Africa. Every country except maybe for Gambia and Togo, they have a term limit. Look at the late president of Nigeria. Had a two-term limit. Honorably went into life after presidency. Passed away. Is given a very dignified burial. Go to other countries. Liberia here. Yeah, one-term president. He ran for a second term. George Weah, he conceded he's enjoying life after presidency. You can count. You can count them. West Africa is becoming a bastion for democracy because we have seen opposition parties beating incumbent presidents. That's happening. Look at Ghana, what happened in Ghana. A former vice president who was an acting president was defeated by a former opposition. He came and actually defeated a opposition, how to call it, a former vice president, right? He was a former vice president, contested and win. So this is going to be second time because he was there before. So the Gambia actually has to follow the international political norms by agreeing to the fact that we cannot be stagnant. We have to move forward.
Let's look at a convention. The UDP recently concluded a convention. You got close to, 7 million Gambian dollars. Is that enough for your war chest for 2026?
This is just for Seattle. Remember, before the mega Congress, there were Minnesota here. We also had our Congress, a state where you don't have a high concentration of Gambians. One night, we were able to raise $21,000. In fact, Minnesota is a well-known destination for Gambian politicians. During the time of NAD, we hosted Halifa Sallah, we hosted Lawyer Darboe, we hosted Ahmad Ba. OJ was the last politician to come here prior to the 2016 presidential election. He came and had a dialogue with Gambians. He gave us a promise that the opposition would come together. They will have a unified candidate. And then, but Ousainou Darboe, his word, what he told me in privacy here is what is happening. That most of the people that are fighting, they are not fighting for love of the country, but for self. That the people that you trusted in opposition, when they take over in government, they're going to condone and they repeat the same wrong that Jammeh was doing. And he's been vindicated. So Gambians, we have to be patriotic and then be ready to speak the truth. Unfortunately, a common Gambian man and power and position, the Palazzo syndrome is catastrophic. Is what is definitely killing the Gambian spirit of national unity and development. Yeah. So, from here, just remember when during Barrow's presidency, how to call it, my Kotoke, His Excellency, the ambassador to Turkey, Alkali Conte would be a witness. We collected over $3,000 here, Gambians in Minnesota, to actually contribute to the Barrow presidency. The very minute he was actually selected as UDP's flag bearer. Prior to that, we have a very strong, how to call it, we have a very strong, how to call it, advocacy group here, rather, which is a branch of the Support the Gambia Demographic Project. When Darboe and the group were incarcerated, we also collected money. Gambians, contributed money over $3,000 was also sent to the UDP leadership towards their legal fee. So Minnesota, aside Minnesota, you have, the UDP chapters in different parts of Europe. Those are also going to have their individual project. In fact, remember when Barrow actually was selected as the flag bearer for the coalition, MB Krubali would tell you that the diaspora contributed over 9 million towards Barrow's presidency. So it's all hypocrisy to indicate that the diaspora hasn't done anything. They know. Even the 2021 election, Minnesota here, for UDP alone, we contributed $300,000. So the UDP, the money they are generating is coming from members of the party, sympathizers of the party. The NPP might be the richest political party, but what is their source of income? For the UDP is the common people who are contributing. The $5 is, the $10, the $20, the pledges. These are what is actually supporting the country. And
Okay.
then Gambians are committed to supporting UDP through finances, through whatever means, in order to ensure that we have a UDP government come 2026.
Okay. Let's look at the political equation as of now in the Gambia. The Jammeh issue seems to be gaining a lot of traction these days. He's releasing audios. His recent audio is about his eventual comment that nobody, even President Barrow, cannot stop him, and that they will see, he will see who owns the Gambia, who really owns the Gambia. So, do you see Yaya as a factor in the political equation in 2026?
Well, quite interesting. Yeah, Jammeh is in exile. We haven't seen we were told prior to his exile, there was some kind of memorandum of understanding that was signed between ECOWAS and Jammeh, that one of the conditions was he would have to go into exile and stay completely out of the Gambian politics. But he started talking. Of course, here's a man, Jammeh, I think history will record him as Gambia's most powerful president. He ruled with iron fist. He became richer than the country. Unfortunately, all the assets are now sold off in shady deals. That is now the subject of investigation by a parliamentary, special select committee. So Jammeh literally lost almost everything. I mean, his party is actually stolen from him by one of his most trusted persons, Fabakary Tombonjada. And now the non-alliance, Jammeh is using his electrical broom to actually, fire everybody, including my best friend, lawyer Lamin Tamba. Unfortunately, I don't know, but he's just bluffing. Jammeh, even if you give him free ticket to come to the Gambia, I don't think he's gonna come, because the recommendations there, the findings by both the TRCC and the Jammeh Commission. Before, we believed that Jammeh was invincible, was a superman, but Jammeh Commission findings actually unearthed very harrowing, revelations that he was actually milking from the state-owned enterprises. We knew what was going on. Everything now is brought to the public domain, and then with the Alas Bank reference to Alas Bank, we now know what was the power behind that. And then,
But
unfortunately,
now look at the
mm,
contradiction. Sorry for
mm,
interjecting. Look at the contradiction. These properties were confiscated. They were
mm,
sold off literally in our local parlance, one third.
yeah. In fact, rather I would say in Mandinka they call it Sun Suluto, because the reason why Jammeh's vast assets were forfeited to the state was because they say he had instituted a sophisticated web of corrupt practices. So these are now state-owned assets. They were supposed to be sold so that the proceeds, go into national covers. But unfortunately, like the findings now, I believe they just one-third them. So hopefully, Gambia is a country of commissions of inquiries since Barrow came. So I'm not optimistic, because the Jammeh Commission recommendations were selectively, implemented. A lot of money was actually spent into the establishment and operation of that commission. Now look at how to call it, the the TRC, still the victims are waiting for justice to be served to the human rights, violators. You feel discouraged. What is the outcome of the police investigates into other crimes? You talk of the crude oil saga. So commissions of inquiries are they established, recommendations are given, but there's lack of political will for government to act on them. So I'm not optimistic. I'm cautiously optimistic, maybe, even if the parliamentary select committee comes with wonderful findings and recommendation for them to prosecute people. I doubt whether Barrow would have the political will to do that. So Jammeh has all the right to talk about. This is in fact shameful to the government. If this government was serious about reforms, they would have shut down Yahya Jammeh and you know, completely, take care of his records. But now it appears there are Gambians there are Gambians on the ground who even wish Jammeh was back as president because they compare his record to Barrow. Corruption is being celebrated. He looks like to the president it's just an opinion. So that is emboldening the economic vultures, who are going rampage in every sector of the economy, who has been charged and prosecuted since Barrow took over as president. The reference is made to Banja, just for $50,000 or less than that. I don't understand. Maybe he's giving his pardon. I'm not sure what is happening. The case of the former minister, who knows what is happening? 34 charges were preferred upon him. He was supposed to be taken to court, but nobody knows what is going on. So I don't know. I mean, Gambians have a clear choice to retain the decadent political situation we have post 2026, or have a better choice and put in a government that would actually be developmental or development oriented and then push the Gambia forward instead of having it stagnant.
Dr. Sabally, last week we had a banker money who has been in the struggle in the US, like you people, several years ago. Well, in his interview was very emotional. He spoke about the fact that the way some people are criticizing him because of his kind of non-commitment to the struggle now, because he had to fend for himself. Literally, he lost everything during the struggle. So we are now in a situation where those who were fighting Jammeh, thinking that after Jammeh, they were going to enjoy the fruits of their labor, some of them are still struggling, economically. So in the US here, what is your take on this perspective that those people who are struggling, fighting against Jammeh, they still have to fight against Barrow, and they while neglecting their families' economic well-being?
Yeah, I made Banker Mane and his co-conspirators for the 2014 failed coup in the Gambia. I met them at the court here, the likes of Papa Fall and Alaji Barrow. I met them at the law court here. When they were found guilty, I mean, it's like they cannot work here because it's a felony case. That's the law of the United States. So meaning they cannot work here. So I think Banker, had a very lucrative job here, but because of his involvement in the struggle, especially, part of a group that took arms to go actually attempt to topple a democratically elected government, even though that government was dictatorial. It's against the law of the United States. They were prosecuted here, found to be guilty, and it's felony. They cannot work here. So he made a good choice to go back to Gambia and then rebuild his life. But this is what Barrow told Gambians. The first press conference, he was told whether he's going to actually select former ministers of, former associates of Yahya Jammeh. He told them no. He told that was the promise he gave. But now, most of the major senior government positions are given to former Jammeh associates. In fact, people who are opposed to Barrow's presidency vehemently are the same people who are absorbed into the system. The likes of Fabakary Tombong Fabakary Tombong at that time was the majority leader of the Gambia National Assembly. He was ready to defend Jammeh to the last minute. Sidi Njai, with due respect, I would call him deputy speaker, was a 7-day minister. He defended Jammeh to the last minute and then even threatened that Barrow was not going to be sworn in the Gambia. And his promise stood because Barrow had to be evacuated to Senegal. That's where he was actually sworn in. Sitting Jai ran away with Yahya Jammeh, came back, is absorbed into the system. Unfortunately, this is the situation. Barrow rather is surrounding himself with former Yahya Jammeh strongest, supporters. And this would be the same people. They will be the first to abandon Barrow the moment he's no longer in presidency. They're in there for their selfish interest. And let's pray to God to give us long life and good health for us to actually, witness 2026 election. Once Barrow is actually declared, defeated, people who are surrounding him would be the first to abandon him. Because Jammeh said it. He said before he left the Gambia, he saw people turning into yellow. Barrow, if the Gambia was a university, Barrow would have been a multiple honor of multiple, how to call PhDs, because he is sandwich. He's actually definitely he has seen the uh, Sadauda's presidency, which definitely was democracy, and then replaced a tempered tyrant, so he's able to read, not to avoid repeating the same mistakes of made by Jammeh, but it looks like he's embracing and then celebrating the same mistakes, catastrophic mistakes politically that were made by Jammeh. So nothing has changed. Gambians, we felt betrayed. They keep telling people that there's no permanent enemy in politics. Politics is about morals. Politics is about principles. Gambians need to understand that. But Barona has a desire to self-perpetuate. He wants to stay in power for 20 years, but Gambians ultimately would decide, because remember, Yajame actually desired to stay in for life. Barrow is saying 20 years, but the Gambians would ultimately decide, who would be the president, how long they want that person to stay as president, and 2026 promises to be a very decisive election. So let's see what 2026 will bring about.
Finally, Dr. Sabally, let's talk about this cancer that is encouraging on our psyche, the Gambia, the tribalism. One would have expected this thing to go so wild nowadays. It has now is now becoming a daily topic in our discourse, comfort zone, and as well, in Bantabas. What do you think? Where are we heading to when it comes to that? And the election is also um, next year, 2026.
Mr. Balde, as a social scientist or social science student, if you look at the homogeneity of the Gambian society, Gambia is tribeless. If you look at how intermarriage plays between different tribes in the Gambia, you'll find that we are so cohesive and homogeneous than most countries in Africa. If you go to any household, you are fuller, you speak almost all the languages. Part of my family, they are Jolas. So politics, there are only few hardcore unscrupulous Gambians who are using politics of tribe and politics of tribal identity to divide the Gambians. When it comes to formation of friendships, when it comes to marriage, we don't ask about tribe. So there are only few toxic people who are using tribalism to divide Gambians, and it must be stopped. You cannot see any political party that would say that one would say is exclusive for Mandinkas. This party is exclusive for Fullers. Every political party has representation when it comes to support from all tribes. So if you ask my opinion, Gambia is tribeless, but we have toxic politicians who want to inject tribal identity into our politics just to divide people. Beyond politics, you don't hear it anywhere. It's unfortunate. It should be condemned. In fact, we are a country of Muslims and Christians. Our Islam completely completely forbids tribalism. Everybody knows that. An ayah which ends with inna akramakum indallahi atikakum. Those that are actually the best in the sight of Allah are those with taqwa. So tribe, you cannot find it anywhere in the scriptures. If you look at the Quran, it doesn't say Ayu al Mandinka. No, it would say talk to human beings. There's a whole surah which is Suratul Insan. So the concept of tribe, I don't know where is it coming from, but to me, Gambia is tribeless, and those bad citizens that are attempting to use tribe to divide people for political expediency should be called out in their names and be condemned. Unfortunately, this was promoted in 2021 on MPP's platform. The likes of Ahmad Jite, I had them mentioning tribe, Uncle Badembo, with due respect, elderly statesman, the likes of former how to call it under Jammeh Boricoli. I think it was they all stood on MPP platform to actually castigate a particular ethnic group. What for? Just politics. Right now, statements that are attributed to Sidinjai says there is a political party that are actually going around in uniform or maybe arming themselves, giving a threat that they will be expelling, some of the, he mentioned those tribes. How is unfortunate. Gambia cannot be tribal. If you look at the way we are actually living, either within or outside of the country, Minnesota here, for instance, we have the Gambian Association. You have all kind of representation here. Senegal is bigger than us. Senegal don't talk about tribe because they look at national interest. I think our understanding of patriotism and even understanding of our own religion is definitely deficient, that we need to actually revisit that, because whoever talks about politics is a bad individual, is a bad Muslim, is a bad Christian, is a bad citizen, is a bad human being. If that person do not actually repent, if he dies, he may go to hellfire, because tribalism is condemned by our scriptures. So nobody should actually, let's talk about politics of national unity and cohesion. Let's actually present our party manifestos, our program. This is what would actually convince people to vote for you. Politics, tribal identity in politics is unfortunate. I feel sad. This is why 100% I decided to stay away from talking about tribe, because it doesn't exist. In school, I have friends who are from all kind of tribes, and even today I maintain those friendship with those people. So I cannot be tribal, because I don't see myself as anything other than a Gambian, even though I come from the Mandinko tribe. But that is just for identity, so that people know Sabally. So you have Sabally. Look at even the structure of the Gambian last name, Sanyang. Sise, you can have Sanyang in the Jola tribe, Sanyang in the Mandinko tribe, Koli. It tells you how cohesive we are.